Well, those images. 35 years ago today, catastrophe struck when the old I-90 floating bridge took on water and sank to the bottom of Lake Washington. Glad you're with us today. I'm Greg Copeland. We're going to take you back, show you the view from Sky King as the events unfold, as sections of I-90 snapped loose, heaved sideways, and sank one section at a time. This all happened November 25th, 1990. Here's a look from above. Again, this was the original span, which opened in 1940, connecting Seattle to Mercer Island. You see in this video, the second bridge next to it, that had opened the year before this happened. That was a wider span with more lanes to help alleviate traffic, but at the time it was handling all of the traffic because the old bridge was undergoing renovations as part of a widening project on it. Now, as you're about to see, something went terribly wrong as a powerful storm pummeled the Northwest with heavy rain and high winds. We're going to begin with the King 5 News special report with Mike James and Gene Anderson.
King 5 News. Live from Seattle, this is a King 5 News special report on the Thanksgiving flood and the collapse of the old I-90 bridge.
Good evening, I'm Gene Anderson. Our top story tonight, the collapse of the old I-90 bridge. It is a transportation mess for late holiday travelers tonight, but the real nightmare will surely come at rush hour tomorrow morning. The old I-90 bridge is broken into pieces. A new section of the interstate is shut down indefinitely. Tonight, in this special edition of King 5 News, we'll show you the collapse of the I-90 bridge. We'll tell you what the state and others are saying about why the bridge went down. We'll offer some advice to commuters who may be down to just one bridge across the lake, and we'll sketch the long political and legal fight over the future of I-90. Mike?
Gene, this is a disaster that comes at the worst time for the residents of Western Washington, already damaged by some of the worst flooding ever in this state. Now motorists are looking at a traffic disaster. When the old I-90 shuttered and fell apart today, it also shut down the new I-90 bridge. And our top story coverage continues now with King 5's Jim Foreman. He's been out at the break all this day. Jim.
It's still an unbelievable sight to turn around and look at no cars coming across the I-90 bridge from Mercer Island. Unbelievable, but it is the reality of the situation, and boy, oh boy, tomorrow it's going to be one mess. Right now, work is going on to try and find out just how badly damaged the cables that secure the bridge in place are. They were damaged when the old bridge went down, and what a sight it was to see. It was an amazing thing to watch. This morning, work crews found the bridge taking on water. In minutes, it went under, and King 5 was there.
Thing is breaking up right before our eyes. Sections are dropping off.
Sky King was also in place, hovering over the span when it went down, getting these dramatic pictures. Tonight, Department of Transportation engineers are theorizing that somehow water started pouring through watertight doors, but they're not ready to say how or if anyone is to blame. Ron Kinoshita was on the bridge when it started sinking.
Yes.
He scrambled to safety.
Yeah, well, we were in the middle of that bridge there.
When you just got off?
When we were running around on the pontoons. Anytime it could have gone. I was ready to go in the water.
The old bridge died a slow death. Hours after the first violent shudders, another section gurgled and was swallowed up by Lake Washington. At dusk, the surviving span, part of the huge high-rise, was hauled away by the tugs. Hauled away so it couldn't do any more damage to the I-90 bridge. Now, just why is the I-90 bridge shut down? Well, the bridge, the old span, was like this over the cables that hold the new bridge. When the bridge collapsed and sank, it rested right on the cables, and divers right now are in the water trying to find out what they can do to shore up those cables to reopen the bridge. But just when the bridge will reopen, that's anybody's guess. King 5's Julie Blacklow was on the bridge when the folks calling the shot from the Department of Transportation were meeting right down there.
They'll facilitate.
Seattle's mayor, police chief, and state transportation officials gathered on the new bridge to begin planning for the anticipated traffic jams from the temporary closure of I-90. And tugboats gathered around the floating remnants of the old bridge to keep it from crashing into the new bridge, to keep today's disaster from becoming even worse. Though he would not speculate about what he believed went wrong, State Secretary of Transportation Dwayne Berenson confirmed he'd heard that subcontractors working on the old I-90 had left hatches open on pontoons, allowing them to fill with water. But he would only assert that he and his people need more time to investigate.
We probably need a couple days to take a look at what's down there, and it could be longer than that.
So it won't be open for tomorrow morning's commute?
We wouldn't expect it to be open for tomorrow's commute, that's right.
There is speculation it could be 2 or 3 weeks before anything more than foot traffic is on this bridge again. Berenson did confirm there is no insurance for this disaster, and as much as $100 million worth of bridge is either underwater or at risk. On Interstate 90, I'm Julie Blacklow, King 5 News.
A lot of questions to be answered tonight, but the big one is, how am I going to get to work tomorrow? We'll have some advice for you. But Mike and Jean, I guess the biggest part of the story that really may be the most amazing thing is that everybody on the bridge, and there were only 4 people, but they managed to get off safely and unhurt.
Well, Jim, the best that we could estimate for what Berenson and others said is a hatch on the pontoon was open and water got into the pontoon, and that's what brought the first section down this morning and another one down this afternoon?
Right. These are floating bridges, and what keeps them afloat are these sealed rooms, are supposed to be sealed, of air. Now, there are watertight doors from the outer areas to the inner areas that are supposed to be serving as the floats. Now, apparently, we have been told by at least one person in the State Department of Transportation that those doors may have been left open or may have failed, and that is what their investigation is centering around right now. If they were left open, and that is still speculation, it could leave the contractor potentially liable to pay the cost of cleaning it up and fixing the damage.
A pretty shocking sight to see over Lake Washington tonight. Jim
Absolutely.
Foreman.
So there you see Jim Foreman back in the day, I think in his first week here, and that was the big story he got to cover. Jim is going to join us from Fort Collins, Colorado to talk about the event. So good to see you again. It's been a while, Jim.
Hey, Craig.
It's funny to look back and watch that. How long had you been at King when you were thrust out onto to cover the story?
It was my first week. Talk about a baptism by fire. I was in a bed and breakfast that the station was putting me up in while I tried to look for a place to live. And the phone rang and said, the bridge is sinking. And what? Just turn on the TV. And I flipped on the TV, and there it was going down. So I raced down there. And the State Patrol at the time was allowing us to go right up to the edge. So we were right there. The road stopped, the bridge was gone, and the water was right there. It was an incredible sight to see.
I mean, we can only see so much by looking at some of the old video. And, you know, I was just a teenager back then, and I didn't pay too much attention to it back then. But now looking through all the old videos and watching it, you get a sense of what it was like. But from your perspective, to get that kind of access, it had to just been amazing, quite the spectacle to watch that close up.
It was, and it seemed as though things were going to stabilize through the afternoon. But late afternoon, another squall came through, and it was bringing the rain right against those open doors, and more of the bridge went down. And that's when they really started the concern for the new bridge, that these chunks of the old bridge were falling on the cables holding it in place. But it was incredible to be able to talk to the people who were on the bridge, to let the State Patrol and the DOT let us right up to the edge. It was really an opportunity to bring the viewers to the scene of something that no one has ever seen before.
You had said in your report that, and we knew there were people on there, obviously they were doing that construction work as part of a widening project and an update. But just before that bridge sank, 4 people were able to get off the bridge. That had to have been a pretty harrowing ordeal for them.
Yeah, I talked to bridge engineer Ron Kaneshita, one of the names that I remember 35 years later. And he was one of the last ones off. And if you look at the video, you go back and we'll see more of it. You'll see like a Ford Crown Vic just starting to sink with its flashers flashing. That's how quickly they just scampered off the bridge. They were ready to go in the water, and fortunately they didn't have to.
Just amazing just to sit here and look at some of the video. No matter how many times I see it, it's just to think about what happened and the chain of events that led to that, and everybody just scratching their heads going, what just happened? And to be able to sit and watch that and report on that in your first week.
It was a hell of a first week. We had 100 years that turned into 500-year flooding, killer floods across parts of western Washington. The rain was just unrelenting. Fur Island was underwater. Dikes were breaking everywhere. Mount Vernon was going to take on water. It was just one of those big, incredible storms. And here you had, over the Thanksgiving holiday, the work that had stopped, and what they did before they went on the holiday would be under great scrutiny.
How does that compare to everything else you covered? I mean, from your long career at King 5 to start out that way, I know you had a lot of other big ones, but where does that rank?
It was one of the top ones because I had to become a very quick study on floating bridges. This was the first of its kind of bridge when it opened in 1940. And it managed to survive all the way to 1990. And to watch it just in front of you, in slow motion, just kind of heave and then slide under the water. Just one of those things 35 years later that is still incredible and stamped on the mind forever.
Well, it was great watching the old reports of you standing out there talking about it, and it's obviously great to see you again. Appreciate you coming on and sharing some of those memories with us.
Anytime, Craig.
Take care. When we come back, closer look at what caused the bridge to sink. A familiar face to King 5 viewers will join me next to help pinpoint some of the problems. Take a look here. The old chunks of the old I-90 bridge are still at the bottom of Lake Washington today. This is some underwater video from ADD Adventures recorded in 2023. You can still see the concrete sections on the lake bed there. Also the old road grate that if you drove across the old bridge, it made that buzzing noise as you drove over it. Drivers also spotted construction cones, signs, and a lot of other debris littering the area down there. It's all still there on the bottom. Well, Peterbilt, 35 years later. So what went wrong? Who was to blame? Who was going to pay for the damage? And what about any political fallout? King 5 journalist Jim Compton filed this report just a few days after the sinking.
Despite repeated warnings from state inspectors that water was building up in its pontoons, despite sporadic attempts to pump out the accumulation of water, despite the fearsome weather the region had experienced in the days preceding, no one was on the old span on that fateful Saturday night. And when they arrived in the morning, it was too late to intervene, as section after section filled with water and plunged to the floor of the lake.
The thing is breaking up right before our eyes. Sections are dropping off.
For many, it was like losing an old friend. When it opened 50 years ago, the bridge was national news, an engineering marvel. 25 floating pontoons, 100 tons of steel and concrete, anchored to the lake bottom by 64 anchors. 5 decades later, the aging structure needed updating. And in 1988, it was closed for renovation, something never before attempted on a floating bridge. The plan was to widen and improve the structure. Holes were cut in the sides for access. It may have been a fatal mistake. The hatches that might have stopped the flooding were never installed.
So if you ask in hindsight, would it have been wise to have those holes covered, we would have to probably say, gosh, that would be a smart thing to do.
Nor were the interior hatches secured either. The state acknowledged that workers coming and going from the interior were leaving some doors open.
There's a lot of traffic within those cells and movement within there, so just in a matter of access, I would say there's probably was doors open, but as far as the requirements of the contract, those doors that were required by the contract to be closed were closed.
And none of the charts or graphs or bridge inspectors' logs give any compelling explanation of what went wrong.
I think we can be pretty definite in saying that we don't know what the cause of the sinking was.
We do, however, know the effects. The sinking pontoons severed the cables holding the new bridge in place. And a new, more ominous question arose. With its anchor cables severed, would the new bridge be next? engineers closed the span, creating a monumental traffic jam. And a flotilla of tugs was assembled to counteract winds that it was feared could damage the new bridge. Ship anchors and chains were trucked to the new bridge in a desperate attempt to stabilize it against the churning winds and waves of the lake. At week's end, there was good news. State Transportation Secretary Dwayne Berenson told us that he hoped to put the old I-90 bridge back in service right on schedule in the summer of 1992. Berenson said all of the sunken or damaged pontoons would be replaced with new ones. His damage estimate is $80 million, and federal funds will more than cover the bill.
$100 million will be available to us. Now, that means that in the first 90 days, we will receive 100% of what we expend, and after that, it will be 90 federal, 10 state, with an upper limit of $100 million.
The damage will be fixed, but the question lingers. What happened? How did an historic and faithful old bridge die such a sudden and ugly death on a cold Sunday morning?
Joined now by longtime King 5 reporter Glenn Farley, now retired for a couple of years, and hopefully you're enjoying it. But always great to have you back and in talking about some of the things we have been watching now. Just like I would expect you to do before you come on here, you prepare and you read the whole Blue Ribbon report that was put out.
Blue Ribbon report,
I haven't even read that yet.
which was pretty fascinating. I mean, the thing you when we were talking off camera, you know, what do you remember? One of the things I remember most, you saw the picture of those tugboats. There were 7 tugboats that had cables attached to them pulling the bridge to the south, because it was the south cables that were mangled, sheared off, broken, twisted, unrelied upon, that were down below holding that side of the bridge. So all of these tugboats were out there. You drove across the bridge, you'd see these tugboats, and there were people who said, I'm not driving the bridge if it's being held together by tugboats. I mean, it was just amazing like that.
Just to keep it in place. And we had talked about, and Jim had mentioned this, about the open hatches, and we heard that in Jim's report, Compton's report. But you said it was more in depth than that, just because they had been, there were the access ports, but the pontoons were left open, and that's how the water got in.
Right.
Wouldn't have been a problem if there hadn't been a huge storm.
So it could have been, but there were multiple causes. I mean, if I've covered a lot of airplane crashes, things like that. If you look at anything, it's never really one thing.
Right.
It's never really one thing. It's a combination of different causes. There's a primary cause, as the National Transportation Safety Board would say. I don't think they ever really investigated this. But it was really a kind of a confluence between not only just horrible weather, stiff winds, it rained for like 30 hours before this happened, but it was also the construction that was going on at the same time. And I hadn't really even heard this term. It's called hydrodemolition. So it's using water under high pressure to sort of scrape off the old surface of the bridge, the road surface. But they couldn't just release that water into Lake Washington. So according to the Blue Ribbon report that was commissioned by then Governor Booth Gardner, they were storing that water in the pontoons, in some pontoons on the bridge. Because of the environmental reasons, they couldn't release it because it was full of concrete chips and dust and everything else. So the bridge was already lower than it should have been on certain pontoons. There was one pontoon called A5, which was in the center of the bridge. That was the first one to go. And they also think, so yes, rain seeped into the pontoons. You already had water in there from the construction. And then you had all these open hatches that you already saw, and then water was being blown into the hatches.
Somebody thought that was a good idea.
And it just kept going. Well, the thing about it is that really the Blue Ribbon Commission found that neither the contractor nor the State Department of Transportation really thought that the bridge sinking was more than a super remote possibility.
Right.
Nobody was really thinking that way. And as we know, I mean, I believe February and November are the 2 wettest months of the year. And this certainly proved it. Like I said, it was raining for 30 hours.
What are your, you covered iterations of this story, I'm sure, throughout the years. What are your other takeaways? I mean, were there any big lessons to come out of this?
Well, remember that this was the second bridge failure of a floating bridge in not that many years, because the western section of the Hood Canal Bridge had sunk in 1979.
Right.
This is 1990.
Also
Just
a hatch issue, but different.
A hatch issue that was not on a lake. It was on salt water, so tides were involved. In reading some of those reports, at low tide, the cables, goes back to cables again, were slack. That caused the bridge to list, which allowed water to come in through a different set of maintenance hatches, not hatches cut into the side of the bridge. So that's why that one went down. But one of the things that Governor Gardner had talked about at the time was that he was worried that people were going to lose confidence in floating bridges, because you really couldn't build suspension bridges really where you're talking about.
Right.
Because it's so deep. You know, seeing those underwater videos, I mean, it is dark down there when you look at these pictures of these.
Well, a couple hundred feet in the deepest parts of the lake. I don't know how deep it is right under the
I don't
bridge,
remember,
but it's deep.
It's down there.
Yeah.
It's down there.
Well, it's fun to look back. It's always good to have you in. And
all right, it's always fun coming back.
Thanks, Glenn. When we come back, we're going to take a look back at the day that the bridge reopened. Don't go away.
Pieces of I-90 are being towed to Renton. Why? So we can pass the savings on to you. Hello, I'm Cornell Hooper, owner of the Renton Bridge Emporium. We have the finest in seconds, irregulars, and bridge remnants. These are quality bridges with just a few slight flaws and defects. We've got I-90, we've got the Hood Canal Bridge, and for you serious collectors, we've got Galloping Gertie. Don't buy a little gift-wrapped piece of I-90 from a stranger. Come see your friends in Renton. We'll sell you a whole lane at incredible savings. How can I afford to do this? Volume, volume, volume. Use them as houseboats, barges, or pretend you're the Department of Transportation and sink them. Remember last year when they wouldn't let you watch the hydros from the bridge? Now you own it. Shop around and then come see me at the Bridge Emporium. We may be underwater, but we won't be undersold. See you here.
Just a classic piece from Almost Live, December of 1990, a few weeks after the collapse of the bridge. Of course, turning current events into comedy. Great job by John Keister there, by the way. The old I-90 span was eventually rebuilt and reopened, but it took a few years. King 5's Susanna Frame was there for that big event on September 12, 1993.
By nightfall, hundreds of cars had breezed over the very last stretch of Interstate 90. Finally completing the freeway which runs from Boston to Seattle. The first members of the public were allowed to go across at 4 in the afternoon, led by a squad of Washington State Patrol officers, making sure no one got confused. The grand opening comes after 30 years of planning, controversy, and collapse. In November of 1990, during renovation of the original bridge, the Thanksgiving weekend windstorm flooded the open hatches, sinking a large portion of the bridge. Many thought the project was doomed, but today all doubts were put aside as the former mayor of Mercer Island, Aubrey Davis, cut the symbolic ribbon. Davis was instrumental in pushing the I-90 bridge idea through in the 70s.
It's a relief. We finally got it. And we wondered when the bridge went down what would happen, of course. But we worked at it, and we got good support from a lot of folks, and made a lot of things come true that some folks said would never happen. They were wrong. It did happen.
A few hours before the public got a chance to cruise the Lacey Murray Bridge, a string of vintage cars, several metro buses, and dignitaries went across. Hundreds of residents came to witness the historic moment.
We're excited. It's been a long 30 years.
When I was a high school kid, I recall the first bridge being opened here too, so it's rather nice to see how it's progressed.
And commuters are already looking forward to fewer hassles going to and from work. Some residents out today are not pleased with the finished product. Pat Healy is one of several Mount Baker residents saying they need more noise protection and a higher wall protecting them from the freeway.
This is what's going to separate children and pets from the highway here. There's going to be no other wall, and I feel that somebody's going to get killed.
The grand opening and first day of travel went smoothly, but the real test here will be Monday morning when the first weekday commute gets underway. In Sky King over the new Lacey Murray Bridge, Susanna Frame, King 5 News.
Well, as we showed you, Jim Foreman led King 5's breaking news coverage that fateful day when sections of the bridge slid under the waves. It's only fitting that we end with another report from Jim, this time from the year 2000, marking the 10th anniversary of the disaster.
The thing is breaking up right before our eyes. Sections are dropping off.
It was unbelievable. The I-90 floating bridge breaking apart and piece by piece sinking to the bottom of Lake Washington. Even 10 years later, the memory of it can take your breath away.
It was kind of like being in the twilight zone. I just didn't believe it.
When I heard it was sinking, total shock, disbelief.
It was really an unbelievable, incredible thing. It's not supposed to happen.
Aubrey Davis headed the panel that investigated the sinking of the old I-90 bridge. He recalls how it punctuated a week of destructive storms throughout western Washington.
Well, I remember the rains were furious.
Record downpours left hundreds of square miles of western Washington underwater. People living on farms and in rural communities felt nature's full fury, trying to save their homes and livelihoods in a losing battle with water and mud. So much water and mud. Unknown to most of us, thousands of gallons of water from rain and relentless waves were filling the pontoons that kept the old Lacey Murray Bridge afloat. Weighted down just like a ship taking on water, one section of the bridge, then another, gurgled to the bottom of Lake Washington. By the end of the day, the 50-year-old bridge was gone. The cause that Davis and his Blue Ribbon panel found was almost too simple to speak.
They're still floating bridges, and they still have to be looked at as boats, and not just a bridge.
For months before the sinking, workers scrambled over the bridge's surface, chewing up old concrete with pressure hoses, trying to make room for a new and wider highway to handle the growing traffic. But when they took off for the Thanksgiving holiday, there were holes and hatches left open. The pumps could not keep pace.
How can you let a bridge sink?
It didn't surprise me.
I didn't believe that the state could screw up that bad.
Lessons learned. The former congressional science advisor reminds us that between Galloping Gertie and the sinking of the Hood Canal floating bridge, that we shouldn't take our bridges for granted, or that the lessons we learned 10 years ago cannot be forgotten.
Every technology carries unintended consequences, carries risks. You have to be as old as I am to see history repeat itself. That's an old aphorism, but it does. People forget that we are vulnerable to these unintended consequences.
In the end, the state settled with the contractor for about $20 million, and rebuilding the new bridge, the federal government picked up most of the $75 million price tag for that. In Sky King, I'm Jim Foreman.
And thanks for joining us for this look back at the sinking of the old I-90 bridge 35 years ago. Thanks to Jim Foreman, Glenn Farley, and everyone here at King 5. Thanks for watching.